Apologies to Shell, who I know are in the audience today. But this isn't really about them. This is about the cynicism that a lot of what businesses do is met by the campaigning fraternity. Campaigners are very important. Let's not kid ourselves that social responsibility for businesses would be anywhere near as advanced as it is if it wasn't for the early campaigns that were drawing attention to issues that people wanted to hide. However, things have kind of moved on. And one of the challenges that we now have is that as businesses try to work out what they do in the face of these new expectations on them, there is a class of campaigner out there that will attack anything that moves and apparently will punish those who do the most. You know, Shell and BP are probably reckoned by many to be amongst the most progressive of the oil companies in terms of being open to the question, how do I create a sustainable energy company, rather than how do I defend the oil economy for the longest because we are an oil company and will always be an oil company. Will they be successful in that? Always a big question, we don't know. But whereas some companies, like the Indian National Oil Company, are going into the parts of the world that others fear to tread, really without much regard to the consequences, nobody really gets to hear about them. And the challenge of that is because if you're a big brand and you're in the public eye, the campaigners know that they will get headlines if they attack you. Now, that's annoying, but it isn't an excuse to keep your head below the parapet and to do nothing. Because guess what? You get attacked for that as well. So I know it's a frustration at times that companies try and do the most enormous things, and yet there will still be people who will criticise. Doing the right thing doesn't mean to say that everybody loves you, and that's a difficult reality to come to terms with sometimes. But then you've got to understand that sometimes it's quite hard to spot who the heroes and villains are, and the Walmart example was one example of that. Here's another one. Oil Company A has shown leadership and a progressive attitude to climate change, manages carbon emissions actively, but whoops, has suffered systemic failures on health and safety. Oil Company B, on the other hand, has denied climate change and lobbied the US government not to legislate to resist activists' attempts on carbon. Boo, boo, boo. But, on the other hand, they have excellent systems leading to solid health and safety performance. Which one's the socially responsible one and which one's the villain? You know which one everyone thinks is the socially responsible one, because Company A is BP, who showed real leadership when they pulled out of the climate coalition, as it was called, which were the lobbyists against acknowledging the reality of climate change back in the 1990s. John Brown was an impressive business figure who demonstrated that businesses can lead from the front. But under his watch, there were systemic health and safety failings leading to some catastrophic explosions which caused loss of life, and all of the investigations afterwards showed that this was a systemic problem. Tricky. So what does that tell us? It tells us that businesses are large and complex. You can get some things right and get some things wrong. And you shouldn't believe in the status of heroes and villains. Incidentally, Exxon has got excellent health and safety because they learned the lessons of the Exxon Valdez. The Exxon Valdez was their first time in the spotlight as the villain of the piece, and they completely and absolutely messed it up. I mean, let's be clear. It is a case study in how not to do crisis management. But having made the mistake and suffered the consequences, they learned the lessons, and they invested very seriously in their systems on health and safety thereafter.